हेलो दोस्तों, कैसे हो? आपका स्वागत है त्रिपाण स्टडी सेंटर में। आज जो हम करने जा रहे हैं काफ़ी महत्वपूर्ण क्वेश्चन पेपर है। ये क्वेश्चन पेपर कक्षा 12वीं के विद्यार्थियों के लिए है और ये पॉलिटिकल साइंस का है जो काफ़ी महत्वपूर्ण है एग्ज़ाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से। इसमें हम कुछ क्वेश्चनों को उठाएंगे जो काफ़ी महत्व रखेगा एग्ज़ाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से। इसको आपको समझना है, लिखना है और विचार करना है और ये काफ़ी महत्व रखेगा। और देखा जाए तो ये क्वेश्चन पेपर जो है हिंदी इंग्लिश दोनों माध्यम में रहेंगे, तो ये काफ़ी महत्वपूर्ण आपके लिए बन जाता है। देखा जाए तो क्वेश्चन जो है समझना बहुत महत्वपूर्ण बन रहता है, क्योंकि क्वेश्चन समझिएगा तभी इसको आगे लिख भी पाइएगा। तो यहाँ पर समझाने की कोशिश भी किया जाएगा और उस पर विचार भी किया जाएगा। चलिए देखते हैं हमारा आज क्वेश्चन क्या है। डिस्कशन मोस्ट इम्पोर्टेंट क्वेश्चन पेपर है पॉलिटिकल साइंस क्लास 12 CBSE NCERT. There is a most important question here, and question on your screen. Highlight the features of Indo-Bhutan relationship. You know that the more question is very interesting. Highlight the features of Indo-Bhutan relationship. You know that India does not have any major conflicts with the Bhutanese government. There is a 2 point here. The Indo-Bhutan relations here. The first year, the efforts made by the Bhutan's monarchs to be weed out the guerrillas as militant from northern eastern India that is operate in the country has been to the helpful to be India. India is involved in a big hydroelectric project in Bhutan and remain the Himalayan kingdom's biggest source of development aid. You know that Indo-Bhutan relation, there is a mainly point here. Northern Eastern India is operate in a country has been helpful to the India, and there is a next year big hydroelectricity project in a Bhutan. And most important point here, remind the Himalayan kingdom's biggest source of development aid. You know that. That's the most important Indo-Bhutan relationship here. Question on your screen. Question here. Analyze the components of India as a security strategy here. You know that the question is very interesting. Analyze the components of India as a security strategy here. India's security strategy has a four-bodied component here. Four most important component here. The first component was strengthness. It is a military capabilities here. It is a first component here. Strengthening there. It is a military capability here. The strengthenings there, it is a military capability. And the India has a decision to conduct a nuclear test in a 1998 was justified the Indian government in a term of safeguarding national security. That's important here. The first component was strengthening. It is a military capability, and there is a most important safety guard here. There is the nuclear test here. Is a 1998. And second component, there is second component of India's security strategy has been to be strengthened international norms and international institution to be protect its security interest. That's an important component here. Second, there is a strength international norm and international institution to be protect the security interest here. And the next, the third component of Indian security strategy is graded to avoid to meeting a security challenge within the country. Know that third component of Indian security strategy here graded to avoid to the meeting security challenge within the country. And the next year, several militiation group from areas such as Nagaland, Mizoram and Punjab and Kashmir among other have from a time started to be break away from India. You know that is the most important here. The several military groups for the areas such as Nagaland, Mizoram and Punjab, Kashmir, among the other have from a time to time a shout to be break away from India. And the next year, India has tried to be preserve a national unity by adopting a democratic political system. You know that India is a preserved to national unity by adopting a democratic political system. And at last, there has been to attempt in India to be developed it economic in a way that the vast marks of citizen is left out of poverty. That's important. There is a economical in way to that is a vast mass of citizen is left out of poverty. That's important component here. Question on your screen. Question here. State a difference between the first 5 year plan and second 5 year plan. You know that question is very interesting. A difference between the first 5 year plan and second 5 year plan. Difference between the first 5 year plan and second 5 year plans. The firstly here, the first 5 year plan started with the trust on agriculture development. The first 5 year plan started with the trust on agriculture development, whereas there the second 5 year plan started on heavy industry. You know that, you understand? First 5 year plan is the agriculture based, and second year plan have a heavy industry base here. The first 5 year plan has a emphasis on the petitions, and second 5 year plan wanted to the bring about the quickly structure transformation here. That's the most important two difference here. The first 5 year plan is based on agriculture development, and second 5 year plan is stressed with the heavy industry. But there is a first 5 year plan have a emphasis on the petition, and second 5 year plans want to be varying about the quick structural transformation here. That's important. Question on your screen. Question here. Describe a problem faced by the election commission while holding their first general election in the country. Know that question is most important for the exam point of view. Describe the problem faced by the election commission while the holding the first general election in the country. You know that the holding election required to the delimitation of drawing there is a boundaries of the electoral constituencies, and there this task to a long time. You know that holding election required to the delimitation or drawing the boundaries of the electoral constituency, and this talks to a long time. And secondly here, when the first draft of the electoral roll was published, name of nearly 40 lakh women were not recorded in the list. This is a major problem here. There is a major 40 lakh women were not recorded in the a list here, and there were 17 crore eligible voters who had to elect to the about 3,200 MLA and the 489 members of Lok Sabha. You know that is the most important point here. There are 17 crore eligible voters who had to elect to about 3,200 MLAs and 489 members of Lok Sabha. And the next point here, only 50% of these eligible voters were illiterate. That's the most important point here. only 50% of voter literate here. The election commission had to be think about some special method of voting. You know that false elections face a many problem on your screen. That's important here. Question on your screen. The question here. Describe a security challenge faced by the new independent country of Asia and Africa after the Second World War. You know that question is very interesting for the exam point of view. Describe a security challenge faced by the new independent country of Asia and Africa after the Second World War. You know that the point here, the newly independent country face a threat not only for the outside their border but also from within here. The new independent country face a threat not only from the outsider their border but also from within here. And some these states face the threat from a suppressed movement within the country. That's important here. And most important point here, terrorism is a problem faced from outside the border. Terrorism is a problem faced from outside the border. And the next year, newly independent countries are thickly populated and they are facing the problem of poverty. You know that is the most important question for the exam point of view. There is a first year outer their border but are from within here, and secondly here separatism movement within the country, and third is here terrorism is problem face, and the fourth year problem of poverty. There is a most important 4 point here. There is security challenge faced by the new independent country like Asia and Africa after the Second World War. Question on your screen. Question here. Explain a lesson learned from emergency imposed in 1975. You know that is the most important question for the exam point of view here. Explain lesson learned from an emergency imposed in 1975. You know that the emergency brought out of both the strength and weakness of Indian as a democracy. The emergency brought out of both the strength and weakness of Indian democracy. The first year, one lesson of emergency is that it is extremely difficult to do away with the democracy in India. And second year, it is about out a sum of legalities regarding there is emergency provision in the constitution that has been to rectified here. It is amended that internal emergency could be proclaimed only on the grounds of army rebellion. That's important here. And the advice to be president to proclaim emergency must be given in a writing by the council of minister. And thirdly here, emergency made everyone more aware of civil liberties, and courts also took an active role in protecting civil liberty of individual. That's important here. The question on your screen, question here. Describe the features of Indian as a nuclear policy. You know that question is very important for the exam point of view here. Describe the feature of Indian as a nuclear policy. The main features of Indian as a nuclear policy are, first of all, Nehru had always put his faith in a science and technology for a rapidly built up modern India. Nehru make India as a modern. There is a deep faith here, science and technology. And secondly here, a significant component of industrialization plan was a nuclear program initiated in there is a later 1940 centuries here. And under the guidelines of Bhomi J. Bhabha, you know that that's important. The significant component of their industrialization plan was the nuclear program initiated in the later 1940s under the guidelines of Homi J. Bhabha. India advocate no first use and over India as a commitment to be a global variables on the non-discriminatory nuclear disarmament loading to a nuclear weapon free in world. You know that is the most important here. India is a advocate or no first use or reiterate India as a commitment to global variable on non-discriminatory nuclear here. India was against nuclear weapon. Hence, pledged it for a nuclear disarmament with a superpower. You know that India was against a nuclear weapon. And the next year, India away to the consider a NPT as a discriminatory and refused to be signed on it. That's important here. NPT here. Even India as a first nuclear test in May 1974 was termed as the peaceful expansion, and India is agreed to be used on nuclear power for the peaceful purpose only. You know that is an important point here. Even India is the first nuclear test of May 1974. That's important here. The Pokhara test is important and the peaceful expansion, and the Indians agreed to the use of nuclear power for peaceful purpose only here. Question on your screen, question here. Discuss the development that escalated the crisis within the USSR that has changed its degradation. You know that question is very interesting from the exam point of view here. Discuss the development that escalated the crisis within the USSR that has changed its degradation. You know that Gorbachev instituted their policies of economics and political reforms, and Perestroika and Glasnost as a democratization within the country. Gorbachev is instituted the policy of economics and political reform here and democratization within this country, and the lead within the Communist Party opposed the reform. A corps took place in the 1991, which was encouraged by the Communist Party headliner. That's important. The people had tasted freedom by then and did not want to be old style rules of the Communist Party. That's the most important point toward degradation of USSR. The people had tasted freedom and by then did not be or want to be old style rule of Communist Party. And power began to shift from to Soviet center to be republics, especially in the more Europeanized part of Soviet Union, which say them as surrogate of states. The administration and political system of the Soviet Union become stagnant. The Communist Party that ruled there in the Soviet Union for over 70 years was not accountable to the people. That's an important point here. The next year, rampant corruption, unwillingness to be allow a more openness in a government and lead to be a collapse of the system. Gorbachev is ignorance and his liberal outlook in the turn and stressness is an anti-communal force in Eastern Europe, and consequently Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria and the East Germany witnessed there is a downfall of the communist regimes here. You know that is the most important. Czechoslovakia, Romania, Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria as East Germany. The witness with the downfall of the communist regimes here. And this saddened development affairs their way for the degradation of USSR. That's an important point for the exam point of view here. Question on your screen, question here. In a spirit there is a conflict, Sri Lanka has registered a considerable economic growth and recorded high level of human development. Support the statement. You know that question is very interesting for the exam point of view here. In the spirit of the conflict, Sri Lanka has registered a considerable economical growth and recorded high level of human development. Support the statement. The ethics conflict has been going on since 1983, but Sri Lanka made a considerable economical growth as in a clear from the following fact. The fact is the most important here. First of all, here Sri Lanka was one of the first developing country to be successfully control the rate of growth of population. You know that is the most important point here. Sri Lanka was one of the first developing country a successful control the rate of growth of population. Secondly, it was the first country to be liberalize the economic. You know that it was the first country to liberalize their economics, and it had a highest per capita gross domestic product. It means GDP here for a many year right through the civil war. That's important. And the next point here, depth there is a leverage of the internal conflicts. Sri Lanka is maintained to democratic political system. That's important. Question on your screen. Question here. Highlight the handles in the path of building a stable democracy in Pakistan. You know that question is very interesting. Highlight the handles in the path of building a stable democracy in Pakistan. The following factors are responsible for Pakistan as a failure in build a stable democracy here. That's important. There are following factors here. First of all, the lack of genius international support for democratic rule in Pakistan has encouraged the military to continue its dominance. That's important. The Pakistan has encouraged the military to continue its dominance here. The USA and other countries have also supported military rules due to the fulfillings their own interest. You know that US and other countries have also supported military rules due to the fulfill their own interest here. Pakistan as a conflict with the India has made paramilitary groups more powerful, which have often said that political parties and democracy in Pakistan are flavored that is a Pakistan or security would be ever harmed by the selfish minded parties and Sovietist democracy and its army stay in a power is justified. That's important here. Pakistan is a conflict with India has made paramilitary groups are more powerful. Paramilitary groups is more powerful. There is a conflict of Pakistan to the India here, and which have their set of political parties and democracy in the Pakistan is a flavor of Pakistan's security will be harmed by the selfish minded party. Selfish and minded party. And sorry, the democracy and as army stay in a power is justified. That's important. The social dominance of military clearly and hand-overnings to the autocracies has a lead to be a frequent overthrow of elected governments and establishment of military government. That's important here. There is social dominance of military here. Global Islamic terrorism, and there is a operation that is a Pakistan's nuclear arsenal mine fall into the hands of these terrorist groups. The military assigned to the Pakistan were seen as the protector of Western interests in West Asia and South. That's important here. The global Islamic terrorism, and there is a apprehensive that is a Pakistan is a nuclear arsenal mine and fall into the hands of this terrorist group. The military regiment and the Pakistan were seen as the protector of Western interests in the West Asia and South. That's important here for the exam point. Question on your screen. Question here. The culture of the politically and economically dominant society leaves its imprint on a less powerful society. World politics analyze the statement. You know that question is very clear and important for the exam point of view here. The culture of politically and economically dominant society leave it is an imprint on the less powerful society. The world politics analyze the statement. You know that's important. The answer here external influence simply enlarge our choose and the sometime there is a modify our culture without overwhelming their tradition. You know that is important here. The external influence simply is enlarge our choose and there is sometimes there are modify our culture without overwhelming their traditional. For example, the Vaga is the no subtitle for the masala dosa and therefore does not pose any real challenge. In the same way, the blue jeans can go well with the homespun khadi kurta. That's important here. The example of burger is a no subtitle to be masala dosa and therefore does not be oppose any real challenge. In the same way, blue jeans can go well with a homespun is a khadi kurta. Globalization broadens our cultural outlook and generate a culture homogenization and making two cultures more different and distinctive. That's important here. The globalization broadens our cultural outlook and generates a cultural homogeneism and making to a culture more different and distinctive here. And this is a dangerous not only for the poor countries but for the whole of humanity. And for it is a lead to be a shrinking of the rich cultural heritage of the entire globe. That's important here. This is a dangerous not only for the poor country but the whole of humanity. The humanity is for it is a lead to be a shrinking of the rich cultural heritage of the entire globe here. Question on your screen. The question here. Analyze the economical effect of globalizations on a developing nation. You know that the question is very interesting and very important for the exam point of view here. Analyze the economical effect of globalization or developing nation. You know that globalization has increased trade in a community across the globe. First of all, globalization has increased trade in a commodities across the globes. The restriction imposed by different countries on the import of the other country has been reduced. That's important here. The restriction imposed by different countries on import of the other countries have been reduced. The restriction on the movement of capital across the countries have also been reduced. That's important here. The restriction on the movement of capital across the countries have also been reduced here. Thus, an investor in a rich country can invest their money in other country, particularly developing countries where they get a better return. You know that's important here. Investor in a rich countries can invest their money in other country and particularly developing countries where there is get a better returns. And globalization has a lead to be spread of ideas such as the internet and the computer-related service. That's important. Globalization has a lead to be spread of ideas such as the internet and computer-related service. And globalization has a lead to increase the movement of people. That's important. Globalization has a lead to increase the movement of people. For example, about 3 lakh Indians are working in a Silicon Valley in a USA. Yes, it has a positive impact on the developing nation. That's important here. The 3 lakh Indians are working in the Silicon Valley. That's important. The question on your screen, question here, regional demand for a different part of India exemplify the principle of unity and diversity. Do you agree? Support your answer with the appreciate agreement. You know that question is very interesting here. Regional demands from a different part of India exemplify the principle of unity and diversity. Do you agree? Yes. I agree for these following reasons here. First reason, original aspiration are part of democratic politics. Religion's demand have to be addressed in the democratic way. That's important. The regional aspiration are part of democratic politics. Regional demands have to be addressed in the democratic way. And when we try to be a suppress regional aspiration will be lead to be resistance and secession. That's important. It is not a India but is other small country like the UK. There are a regional aspiration in the Scotland. That's important here. It is not a India but other smaller country like the UK. There is a regional aspiration in the Scotland. The best way to respond to original aspiration it is thought democratic as a negotiations. That's important. And the next year, power sharing. Power sharing regional parties should be allowed to share a power at a regional level, at the state as well as a center, in order to be a more representative. That's important. The power sharing regional parties should be allowed to be share the power at the regional level, at a state as well as the center, in order to be more representative. That's important. The frustrations of the makers of our constitution allow to the federal characteristic to be provide a flexibility and a special provision to accommodate a diversity like a sixth schedule of the constitution. Regional imbalance can be accommodated without beginning or discriminate in any way here. That's important constitution here. And therefore regional aspirations are not encouraged to be exposed or separatism. And thus the India is a regionalism is accepted as a part of democratic political. That's important. The India is regionalism is accepted to the part of democratic politics. That's important.